Good afternoon to everyone. Please, I'll just spend 1 moment to introduce myself. I'm a researcher at Center for Future and Sustainable Technology of the Italian Institute of Technology, and I'm a member of the Carbon Group hosted by Politecnico of Torino. Today, I'm going to discuss about a different field of application of biochar. So the use of biochar has support or catalyst itself for electrochemical process. As I told you, I'm working in the as a member of Carbon Group, and as a research group, we have started our activities 20 years ago, and we worked a lot of different kind of carbons. We started with the carbon nanotubes, we moved to nanodiamonds, graphene, and so on. Recently, well, not so recently, but let's say in the last 7-8 years, we start to work with biochar because we were looking for something that matching not only the properties of high-performing carbon source, but also the sustainability and the green aspect of the production and the use. So we just were intrigued about biochar and we start to produce and use it. What we are going to see today, we're going to see why electrocatalysis is nice for biochar, which are the main problems of using biochar for the production of electrocatalysts, and how we approach to this field. Firstly, a brief recap. Any kind of electrocatalyst must be with a material with high surface, stable in the reaction conditions that are very harsh, because you should think about the redox potential window that generally used for this process is quite wide, and not all materials are fit for that. Should be handleable, and after that conductive. There are plenty of materials that can match these parameters: activated carbon, carbon replicas, cutting-edge materials like nanostructured carbon, carbon paper, but all of them, more or less, must be tailored to be very effective in the activity. Biochar, more or less, is matching some of the properties, not all of them, of course, because generally it's quite low in surface area compared to the others, but one thing that I want to stress in this moment is that generally, all of you, me too, we generally try to sell biochar not only as sustainable and green, but as also cheap alternative. And the price, the compromise between price and sustainability is one of the selling point of biochar. Well, don't think to me like a Grinch, but cheap doesn't mean good, and green doesn't mean good in all the fields. If I'm looking for a catalyst, and more in particular in electrocatalyst, what I need is not the cheaper one. I need the one that is working. A working material is far better, even if it's more impacting on the environment. Keep thinking about the batteries. We have plenty of sustainable batteries, but we are still using the graphite electrodes for the simple reason that they are cheap, but they are also performing. If you find something that is performing as graphite and is cheaper, it could be a solid replace. But if only cheap, then graphite still remain on the market. That's the point. Cheap for biochar is not every time a good thing. It's just a thing. And for matching the properties are required for the electrocatalytic process with the properties of biochar, an engineering process is needed. And in this engineering process, a lot of different approaches could be enforced and exploited, but not all of them are, how can I say, in a politely way, solid from an industrial point of view. One of my research line is about CO2 reduction, and I'm going to talk diffusely about that. In this field, one of the most advanced technology that is enforced by Siemens, if I remember correctly, is based on very large electron converter that are working with noble metals, and those are the cutting edge of the market. So keep in mind that for catalysis, in particular for electrocatalysis, the only thing that is driving the choice of the material is if it is work or not. All the others are just some additions. So trying to match biochar properties with what is required, we approach this field in different ways. One is just tailoring it with metals, with cheap metals, as cheap as we can. For example, we start to tailor biochar with thin, as you saw in the next slides, for preparing catalysts. We start on the lab scale, of course, so wet approach, small beakers, and a very handy process. But we move from that to something that could be also scaled up. Try to keep in mind that we must produce material with properties that are matching the requirements for the electrocatalysis. One of the approach that we found that is quite promising, and it was a good compromising about lab scale and industrial scale, was the microwave approach. The tailoring by using microwave technologies is quite easily to be done, even if it's hard to scale up to tons per day. If you need to produce 10 kilograms of electrocatalysts based on biochar, microwave is perfect. There are plenty of research about that are made by a research group in the, if I remember correctly, in British Columbia in Canada, on the scaling up of microwave till 5 liters, 10 liters of capacity. And those are small for, if you consider them as pyrolytic units, but for this kind of applications, the tailoring surface with metals are perfect. So we use this approach, and with the collaboration of Professor Nadia Garino that you can see in the picture, we try to insert into the biochar a lot of iteratoms, because those iteratoms could be a boost for electrocatalytic activities. Moreover, the introduction of nitrogen and sulfur could be performed by using thiourea that is quite cheap. But in this case, cheap means good, because it's a reagent that could insert inside the biochar structure the heteroatoms that we need. So the final material is an highly engineered material that contains nitrogen and sulfur, more than pristine char produced from sludges, for example, with a control on the inorganic components that are another key parameters for this field of application. But furthermore, we also use a more simple approach. We just impregnate the biochar with salt in a slightly acidic environment, and we reheat in the same furnace that we used to produce it at 800 degrees, promoting a reaction that is commonly known as carbothalma reduction. It's basically the same process that is commonly used in the metallurgic process for production of metals. So try to figure the biochar surface covered by a metal salt that is oxidized, and after that reduced by heating carbon with the reduction that you can see on the bottom of the slide. So we increase the surface area. We remove a part of the less graphitized carbon, so we boost up the conductivity of the material. We tailor it with an inorganic structure that are able to promote catalytic activity, and we try to match the properties of an electrocatalyst, keeping also an eye on the sustainability of the process. Because what we really try to do is just producing a catalyst that is green and sustainable. And that's the reason why we stressed out the biochar component of our research, but that can also performing as the more advanced materials. So the other thing that we did is just insert oxygen inside the biochar by simple activation process into different ways, or by recycling carbon dioxide that is formed during the pyrolytic process at higher temperature with a simple activation process, or by simply mix with an inorganic salt, promoting the insertion of different functionalities. So we both try the physical and chemical activation, and the char that is produced display a lot of oxygen functionalities ranging from hydroxylic to carboxylic ones, and this will be helpfully for different kind of electrocatalytic activity that you see in the next few slides. Also, we just simply try to use urea instead of thiourea, just to simply dope the system by thermal annealing, of course, in this case, with nitrogen. So we create a portfolio of materials tailored with either atoms or nanostructures that could be used for different kind of electrocatalytic processes. The first one, the one that is consuming more of my time, is the electrocatalytic reduction of carbon dioxide. We work on this research together with Professor Jixin Zhang and Nicola Monti, one of the brightest students that pleasure to work with. And our aim is just convert CO2, that is one of the hot topic of research now, to something that could be reused in the chemical industry. We are more focused now on formic acid, but we're also targeting hydrocarbons, alcohols, and so on. The setup that you saw here is the common flow cell setup, where a flux of gaseous CO2 is inserted, absorbed in a basic solution, and two electrodes, a cathode and a platinum foil that act as anode, are working, divided by a membrane. The point is, the electrodes that are working, the cathodes, are based on carbon paper, carbon black, and so on, so we try to fully replace them with biochar. One of the things that we try in the very first place is make a porous biochar, the one that you saw in the FSM captures here, produced from coffee waste streams, tailored with another waste stream, let's say not a proper waste stream, but a secondary product. If you think to mines, for example, leads, one of the secondary products is bismuth, and bismuth is a magnificent material for catalytic activity. As you saw before, we just impregnate coffee-derived biochar with bismuth salt, and we re-annealed it to produce a bismuth oxide. So our carbon sponges made with coffee-derived biochar were deposited on a cathode surface, and we just studied it for reduction of CO2. As you can see from this characterization, the tailoring of the surface of biochar was complete. Bismuth is covering everything, and we loaded a lot. And as you saw before, there is a core of a metallic bismuth covered by bismuth oxide, thanks to the reaction that you saw in the previous slide, where the metals is reduced by consuming carbon, increasing the surface area. We reach a loading of bismuth up to 65%, at least on the surface. Of course, it's LEDX, so it's a little bit lower, but that's another point. So, the core of the work, the electrochemical part, this material performing amazingly. The Faradic efficiency of the overall process is quite high, close to 90%, and the selectivity towards formic acid is very remarkable, up to 80%, and the stability during time that you can see in the bottom part of the slide is quite high, up to 5 hours. Also, the current density reached is considerably high, reach around 100 milliamperes per square centimeter, and it is increased by the potential. So, with this study, we proved that we can use advanced engineered biochar tailored with a metal, a non-noble metal, to convert CO2. So it's an effective catalyst. We tried also something more fuzzy. We use cellulose nanocrystals produced by fermentation, and we tailor it with thiourea and thin by using microwave approach. Create these carbon spheres with nanoparticles of tin. Particularly in this case, what we saw by the analysis was that the carbon remained more or less intact, a little bit more graphitic after the tailoring process, but we were able to insert oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur at the same time, creating a tailoring with thin particles that you saw before and that we can see here in the XPS spectrum. Furthermore, the XRD analysis show the increment of graphitization after the tailoring and the insight of a lot of different kind of functionalities. So in one step, by using a sustainable and scalable technology like microwave approaches, we were able to tailor in carbon spheres produced from cellulose with thin oxide core shell particles, where the core is represented by sulfide thin. These particles were used also for the same reaction that you saw before, conversion of CO2, matching the same results that we obtain by using bismuth. But in this case, we use thin. It's far and considerably more expensive. So we try to combine sustainability with performance, and then we reach results that could be used to say, okay, sustainability in this case is a thing because we matched the properties of the state-of-the-art for reduction of CO2 by using platinum, for example. So we were able to say biochar is a sustainable and affordable solution for make electrocatalysts because we match the properties. And all the other things, the sustainability, the greenness of the synthesis, the conversion of the biomasses, it's a plus. Keep in mind the properties. We match the properties so we can say that this is a solution. After that, we try to explore other fields, fuel cells, for example. Fuel cells are one of the more aged technology in electrochemical energy storage processes. A lot of work has been done during the 70s of the past century. Nevertheless, they never breached the market. They're still expensive, they got a lot of problem with stability and so on. So we try to use a metal direct fuel cell approach that is quite interesting, has a secondary energy storage system, a situation like, for example, when you cannot use an electric generator. And in this case, what you can see from here is that you need a cathode and an anode. And for example, for the cathode, we need platinum-based catalysts. So that was the performances that we must match to say biochar-based material could be an effective replacement. The problem is, as you can figure, that platinum supported on carbon black mainly, or graphene, reduced graphene, are quite effective in this kind of electrocatalysis routes. So we tried to engineering biochar to match the properties. It was a difficult challenge. With the collaboration of Professoressa Stefania Specchia from Green Energy Group of Politecnico of Turin, we try to combine biochar derived from tea, that is practically a zero active material in this kind of catalysis, with a pre-catalyst, the iron phthalocyanine, with the system that merging the green chemistry 8 points approach with what we want, keeping the performances high and the tailoring process scalable. So we try to ball mill it after high temperature anneal the biochar. This is the weak point of this work. This is a weak point because we need a very highly conductive material where we can insert the metal sites by bond milling, the precursor that you saw before. Furthermore, in the same step, we also flux CO2 to increase the surface area and insert oxygen functionalities, and we had urea, a separate step, to insert nitrogen functionalities. And what you can see is that the common theme is low in surface area, 4 square meters per gram, so practically negligible. The activated one was around 50 square meters compared to the common support of platinum, that is carbon black, the Vulcan carbon black, that is up to hundreds. And the pore distribution is also in the mesopore range. What we saw is that even if we were far for the commercial one because we didn't match the activity, the onset potential and the alpha potential were practically the same of platinum-rich catalysts. And if you compare the activity normalized on the surface area, our material were considerably high. Consider that with the surface area up to 250, you obtain an activity up to 29 amperes on gram. We obtain 3 amperes on gram with the surface area that is 5 times lower. So something that you should keep in mind. The real strong point in our case was the methanol tolerance. As we try to figure how to solve the methanol, or at least approach the methanol direct fuel cell by using biochar, what we saw is that both engineering biochar catalysts were far more stable than platinum-1 and methanol. What does it mean? It means that they did not lose any activity during time, and they could be cycle after cycle recharged and reused. So our engineered material could match the performances of platinum carbon on the time, because when it lost activity, we remain the same. So it's a thing that should be considered. Furthermore, the durability test show that our material, after 4,500 cycles, did not lose practically activity, and platinum carbon materials lost up to 80% of the total activity. Methanol is not a good environment for platinum metals, platinum similar metals like platinum and palladium. It's a very stressful medium. So, but the combination with iron and biochar, well, they survive, and they are still working after 4,000 cycles. So, in conclusion, what I'd like that is remaining to all of you from this presentation is that biochar is cheap, is sustainable, and could be produced from renewable sources or waste streams. But that's not enough. If you want to reach other sector of the market where the performances are the only driving goal, what you need to have is the performances, and you must have them. And for doing that, you must explore a lot of different functional routes, ranging from microwaves to thermal annealing to chemical treatments and so on, because only in this way you can say that biochar is a reliable and trustworthy solution for electrocatalysis. With this, I'm finished, and wish to thank all of you for your patience and this occasion to discuss about this kind of research. Thanks to all of you.